have to take care of this business, but I just want to say, couldn't be more humbled and honored to be part of Berkshire as we go forward. So, thank you. Very kind, thank you. Now we'll get down to the business we have to accomplish this afternoon. The meeting will now come to order. I'm Greg Abel, Vice Chairman of the Board of Directors of the company. I welcome you to this 2025 annual meeting of shareholders. Mark Hamburg is Secretary of Berkshire Hathaway. He will make a written record of the proceedings. Rebecca Amick has been appointed Inspector of Elections at this meeting. She will certify to the count of the votes cast in the election for directors and the motions to be voted upon at this meeting. With us today are the partners in the firm of Deloitte & Touche, our auditors. The named proxy holders for this meeting are Greg Abel and Mark Hamburg. Does the Secretary have a report of the number of Berkshire shares outstanding, entitled to vote, and represented at the meeting?
Yes, I do. It is indicated in the proxy statement that accompanied the notice of this meeting that was sent to all shareholders of record on March 5th, 2025, the record date for this meeting. There were 544,953 shares of Class A Berkshire Hathaway common stock outstanding, with each share entitled to one vote on motions considered at this meeting, and 1,339,905,639 shares of Class B Berkshire Hathaway common stock outstanding, with each share entitled to 1/10,000 of one vote on motions considered at this meeting. Of that number, 368,859 Class A shares and 670,224,635 Class B shares are represented at this meeting by proxies returned through Thursday evening, May 1st.
Thank you, Mark. That number represents a quorum, and we will therefore directly proceed with the meeting. The first item of business will be a reading of the minutes of the last meeting of shareholders. I recognize Ms. Sue Decker, who will place a motion before the meeting.
I move that the reading of the minutes of the last meeting of shareholders be dispensed with and the meetings be approved.
Do I hear a second?
I second the motion.
The motion is carried. If a shareholder is present who did not send in a proxy or who wishes to withdraw a proxy previously sent in, you may vote in person on the election of directors and other matters to be considered at this meeting. Ballots can be obtained at the microphone Zone 9, located on the main floor. The next item of business is to elect directors. I recognize Ms. Sue Decker to place a motion before the meeting with respect to the election of directors.
I move that Warren Buffett, Gregory Abel, Howard Buffett, Susan Buffett, Stephen Burke, Kenneth Chenault, Christopher Davis, Susan Decker, Charlotte Guyman, Ajit Jain, Thomas Murphy Jr., Wallace Weiss, and Merrill Whitmer be elected as directors.
I second the motion.
It has been moved and seconded that the 13 individuals named in Ms. Decker's motion be elected as directors. The nominations are ready to be acted upon. If there are any shareholders voting in person, they should now mark their ballot on the motion. Ms. Amick, when you're ready, you may give your report.
My report is ready. The ballot of the proxy holders in response to proxies that were received through last Thursday evening cast not less than 387,051 votes for each nominee. That number exceeds a majority of the number of the total votes of all Class A and Class B shares outstanding. The certification required by Delaware law of the precise count of the votes will be given to the Secretary to place with the minutes of this meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Amick. The 13 nominees have been elected as directors. The next 7 items of business related to 7 shareholder proposals that are each set forth in the proxy statement that can be accessed at berkshirehathaway.com. Each proponent will be allowed up to 5 minutes to speak on behalf of each proposal. I ask that you limit your comments to the matters specifically related to the proposal being voted upon. The first proposal requests that the company publish a report regarding the costs and benefits of Berkshire Hathaway Energy's voluntary environmental activities. The directors have recommended that the shareholders vote against the proposal. I will now recognize Luke Perlow as a representative of National Legal and Policy Center to present the proposal.
Good morning, Mr. Abel, members of the board, fellow shareholders. My name is Luke Perlow, and I'm speaking on behalf of the National Legal and Policy Center in favor of our shareholder proposal asking Berkshire Hathaway to publish an annual cost-benefit report on Berkshire Hathaway Energy's voluntary environmental spending. In plain language, we are simply asking the company to tell us how much it spends on climate projects that go beyond regulatory mandates and to demonstrate what returns, if there even are any, that those expenditures generate for shareholders, customers, public health, and the environment. Berkshire Hathaway Energy is subject to environmental laws and regulations that are out of its control. It's not our concern. Our concern is that the company has unnecessarily invested far more than required in fruitless green energy projects. Berkshire Hathaway Energy proudly advertises that roughly a quarter of its energy assets are non-carbon. And for its subsidiary Mid-American, it's even higher at 52%. Further, Berkshire Hathaway Energy has pledged that, quote, as of December 31, 2023, 91% of our overall net investment in property, plant, and equipment was invested in assets not related to coal or natural gas generation. Quote, these statistics are meant to demonstrate leadership on climate policy and reassure stakeholders that Berkshire Hathaway Energy is on track to hit its self-imposed net zero target by 2050. However, no federal state statute requires this pledge. Rather, it's inspired by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change and its Paris Agreement. The IPCC is not a scientific body. It's a political institution whose dire projections have missed the mark again and again. The apocalyptic scenarios that the IPCC uses to project climate catastrophe are next to impossible. But even if they weren't, emissions would continue to rise with or without the United States. The U.S. accounts for just 11% of global emissions. Yet global emissions are at historic highs, driven largely by companies like China, where more than 300 coal-fired power plants are currently under construction. By contrast, the U.S. has only 210 coal plants in total, 170 of which are slated for closure by 2030. In that context, it's difficult to see how Berkshire Hathaway Energy's voluntary crusade moves the global thermostat in any measurable way. Our concerns are not just theoretical. Berkshire shareholders are regularly reminded to focus on a business's underlying financials. So shareholders should ask, how much capital has Berkshire unnecessarily sunk into green energy projects? What incremental earnings, if any, have flowed back to shareholders? Management sustainability reports are bare bones and scattered amongst its subsidiaries. They never connect costs to concrete results. The gap between expense and outcome meets the textbook definition of greenwashing. It stands in stark contrast to Berkshire's tradition of rigorous, numbers-driven disclosure. Ignoring these questions invites real risks. First, voluntary climate spending may translate into capital misallocation. Second, the pattern of spending without quantified benefits undermines Berkshire's reputation for disciplined capital deployment and thus imposes an opportunity cost on shareholders. Our resolution is modest. We ask for a line-item accounting of voluntary environmental expenditures and a quantitative estimate of benefits, such as emissions avoided or dollars saved. Most of this information already exists in regulatory filings and engineering models. Formatting it for shareholders will cost far less than the 9-figure sums currently being channeled into useless climate initiatives. Mr. Buffett himself famously said, risk comes from not knowing what you are doing. Right now, shareholders do not know what Berkshire Hathaway Energy is doing with billions in voluntary climate spending, nor do we know what we are getting in return. vote for this proposal brings much needed sunlight to that question, safeguards ratepayers, disciplines capital allocation, and reinforces Berkshire's reputation for transparent shareholder-focused reporting. We urge shareholders to support this common sense proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Perlow. The motion is now ready to be acted upon. If there are any shareholders voting in person, they should now mark their ballot on the motion. Ms. Amick, when you are ready, you may give your report.
My report is ready. The ballot of the proxy holders in response to proxies that were received through last Thursday evening cast 3,217 votes for the motion and 426,791 votes against the motion. As the number of votes against the motion exceeds a majority of the number of votes of all Class A and Class B shares properly cast on the matter, the motion has failed. The certification required by the Delaware law of the precise count of the votes given to the Secretary to be placed with the minutes of this meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Amick. The proposal fails. The second proposal requests that the company disclose the highest named executive officer's pay ratio. The directors have recommended that the shareholders vote against the proposal. I will now recognize Jing Zhao to present the proposal.
Good afternoon, fellow shareholders. Since we all have read my proposal, there's no need to repeat the content. I would like to express some supplementary remarks. First, I would like to praise our CEO compensation and the low CEO pay ratio. I submitted my proposal not only to our company but to many other companies since 10 years ago on this issue because I was trained, received a PhD in social research methodology. So I know how easily to abuse data to make up different results, as shown in almost all other companies' executive compensation program to make the same complicated and misleading. Second, there's no need to hire outside firms to say what the board wants to hear, because all outside parties manipulate the data to increase the compensation result. Last, in general, according to Wall Street Journal, April 23rd, 2025, the wealthy have gotten richer and control a record share of America's wealth. New data suggests $1 trillion of wealth was created for the 19 richest American households alone in 2024. That's more than the value of Switzerland's entire economy. It took 4 decades from the top 0.00001% of American share of total U.S. household wealth to grow from 0.1% in 1982 to 1.2% in 2023. However, in just 1 year, by the end of 2024, the share of total U.S. household wealth of the top 0.00001% jumped to 1.8%. This trend is not sustainable for American corporate and the American economy, and this is the root cause of the social disorder today. We have experienced and witnessed the American dream over more than half a century. To continue this great dream, please vote on my proposal. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Jow. The motion is now ready to be acted upon. If there are any shareholders voting in person, they should now mark their ballot on the motion. Ms. Amick, when you're ready, you may give your report.
My report is ready. The ballot of the proxy holders in response to proxies that were received through last Thursday evening cast 7,035 votes for the motion and 427,551 votes against the motion. As the number of votes against the motion exceeds a majority of the number of votes of all Class A and Class B shares properly cast on the matter, the motion has failed. The certification required by Delaware law of the precise count of the votes given to the Secretary to be placed with the minutes of this meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Amick. The proposal fails. The third proposal requests that the company issue a civil rights and non-discrimination report. The directors have recommended that the shareholders vote against the proposal. I will now recognize Stefan Padfield, Executive Director of National Center for Public Policy Research, to present the proposal.
Good afternoon, shareholders and board members. My name is Stefan Padfield, and I am the Executive Director of the Free Enterprise Project. On behalf of the shareholders of the American Conservative Values ETF, ticker symbol ACVF, I ask you to support the shareholder proposal that requests the Board of Directors to conduct an evaluation and report on respecting workforce civil liberties. As a major employer, Berkshire Hathaway should respect the free speech and religious freedom of its employees. Respecting diverse views also allows Berkshire Hathaway to attract the most qualified talent, promote a healthy and innovative business culture, and serve its diverse customer base. While companies often push concepts like diversity, equity, and inclusion, such efforts often have the opposite effect. Instead of creating workplaces that afford equal opportunity based on individual merit, DEI too often leads to hostility and polarization. According to the Freedom at Work survey, 60% of employees were concerned that their company would punish them for expressing their religious or political views at work, and 54% said they feared the same for sharing these views even on their private social media accounts. Companies are also facing increased legal and reputational risk for DEI initiatives. Many companies are voluntarily removing DEI initiatives in response to sustained customer dissatisfaction and public pressure. Considering these risks, the company should take immediate steps to assess potential shortcomings and allay these concerns. Shareholders request the Board of Directors conduct an evaluation and issue a civil rights and non-discrimination report evaluating how Berkshire Hathaway's policies and practices impact employees based on their religious and political views, as well as sex, race, color, or national origin, and the risks those impacts present to Berkshire Hathaway's business. I encourage all shareholders to vote for shareholder proposal 4, requesting a report on respecting workforce liberties. And in closing, I leave you with a question related to this proposal for consideration. There appears to be a renewed call in America for corporations to stop playing politics and get back to the business of making America great again by producing great products and services rather than pushing radical political agendas. While no company is perfect, Berkshire appears to have done a good job of avoiding the siren song of woke capitalism. As just one example, while many corporations are currently scrambling to extricate themselves from having partnered with the Human Rights Campaign and its agenda of pushing transgenderism on children, Berkshire has apparently never participated in HRC's Corporate Equality Index survey. So my question is, how did you resist the considerable pressures from ESG investors and woke activists when so many companies didn't? And what measures or policies are you putting in place to ensure that Berkshire will not allow itself to be captured by political activists like HRC under the guise of corporate surveys or otherwise in the coming years? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Padfield. The motion is now ready to be acted upon. If there are any shareholders voting in person, they should now mark their ballot on the motion. Ms. Amick, when you're ready, you may give your report.
My report is ready. The ballot of the proxy holders in response to proxies that were received through last Thursday evening cast 2,302 votes for the motion and 430,722 votes against the motion. As the number of votes against the motion exceeds a majority of the number of votes of all Class A and Class B shares properly cast on the matter, the motion has failed. The certification required by Delaware law of the precise count of the votes given to the Secretary to be placed with the minutes of this meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Amick. The proposal fails. The fourth proposal requests that the Board of Directors oversee an independent racial discrimination audit. The directors have recommended that the shareholders vote against the proposal. Oh, sorry, I've got a repeat here. Because we're on the fifth proposal, so sorry about that. So as I noted, the last proposal failed. The fifth proposal requests that the company designate a board committee to oversee the company's diversity and inclusion strategy. The directors have recommended that the shareholders vote against the shareholder. I will now recognize Christopher Cox, Executive Director of the Seventh Generation Interfaith Coalition for Responsible Investment, to present the proposal.
Hello, Mr. Abel, Berkshire Hathaway Board and fellow shareholders. You may notice that I am not Jalen Spann, the woman who's attended and presented this proposal the last 4 Berkshire Hathaway meetings at the request of Berkshire investors, seeking assurance that there are strong employee hiring, cultivation, and retention programs in place across Berkshire companies. My name is Chris Cox, and I come in her place this year because, unfortunately, as many surveys have shown, there seems to be more consideration shown when the message is coming from a white male voice. So this year, I decided to try and amplify her voice and the concerns that investors continue to raise. As I do, let me also make clear that I recommended that Mr. Abel, Mr. Buffett, you and the board agree to hold one meeting with Ms. Spann and the investors she represents, allowing them an hour to share and discuss why it is so very important to Berkshire Hathaway's companies to strategically manage its human capital management efforts. This resolution asks for a designated board committee to oversee Berkshire's company's approach to diversity and inclusion. The board currently includes diversity within its audit committee responsibilities, but explicitly includes this only as a risk oversight obligation, not as an opportunity. That negative lens means Berkshire may be missing market opportunities for organizational growth. That's why the SEC let the resolution go through to vote, even after the Berkshire lawyers submitted a claim that this request was substantially implemented. Mismanagement of diversity is absolutely a risk. Strong management of diversity is absolutely an opportunity. We are concerned that the Berkshire board and the Berkshire companies are only prepared to see half of the picture. Let me share a little more on the importance of this topic. The U.S. Supreme Court's June 2023 decision striking down affirmative action in university admissions, alongside more recent executive orders, place significantly more scrutiny on workplace programs that are seen as possibly being disadvantageous to specific groups. Companies continue to have a legal obligation and financial incentive to ensure equal opportunities that cultivate the strongest possible teams and to refrain from creating workplaces that are hostile, unsafe, discriminatory, or enable harassment. This is not about replacing managers or hiring quotas. nor is it about prioritizing one group of people over another. It's about ensuring that employees are able to participate in and advance their careers based on merit and are not held back by their gender, race, or any other diverse characteristic. We can't assume that this will happen simply because it's the way that things should be. Companies need to have intentional strategies for the best ideas and employees to make it forward unrestricted by bias or discrimination. The value of this should be intuitive to Berkshire Hathaway shareholders, as the company itself exemplifies how having different products and services can support total returns, responding to different economic conditions. This holds true for workplace diversity as well. Operating environments change quickly, and a diverse team is more likely to have the range of skills and varied problem-solving abilities needed to be responsive. Teams that think differently about challenges can anticipate risks, navigate uncertainty, and create more robust solutions than teams where everyone thinks about problems the same way. I formally move this proposal, recognizing as I do so that it is the board and executive team that will make the decision to implement its request, regardless of the vote's outcome. I encourage you again to speak with Ms. Spann and her team to understand their legitimate concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. The motion is now ready to be acted upon. If there are any shareholders voting in person, they should now mark their ballot on the motion. Ms. Amick, when you're ready, you may give your report.
My report is ready. The ballot of the proxy holders in response to proxies that were received through last Thursday evening cast 5,615 votes for the motion and 427,173 votes against the motion. As the number of votes against the motion exceeds a majority of the number of votes of all Class A and Class B shares properly cast on the matter, the motion has failed. The certification required by Delaware law of the precise count of the votes given to the Secretary to be placed with the minutes of this meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Amick. The proposal fails. The sixth proposal requests that the company annually disclose its clean energy financing ratio. The directors have recommended that the shareholders vote against the proposal. I will now recognize Christopher Cox to present the proposal.
Vice Chairman Abel, board members, and fellow shareholders. Good afternoon. Again, my name is Chris Cox, speaking on behalf of As You Sow. Thank you for the opportunity to present this proposal requesting that Berkshire Hathaway disclose its clean energy financing ratio. We're in the midst of an escalating insurance crisis fueled by climate change. In 2024, the United States experienced 27 individual climate disasters, costing over $1 billion each, with total damages reaching $183 billion. The rising frequency and severity of climate events is having a profound effect on Berkshire's business. Berkshire Hathaway's reinsurance business saw losses increase from $9.8 billion in 2021 to $12.6 billion in 2023. And its primary insurance group saw losses increase from $8.1 billion to $11.2 billion over the same time frame. Berkshire's subsidiary, AmGuard, also announced plans to drop over 50,000 policies in California alone. Despite these impacts, Berkshire continues to invest heavily in fossil fuels. For 2019 data from California's Climate Risk Carbon Initiative, Berkshire holds nearly $96 billion in fossil fuel-related equities. Unlike other insurance companies, Berkshire's fossil fuel investments have increased in the past few years. This creates a dangerous cycle of investments in high-carbon activities contribute to climate change, which increases risks to Berkshire's insurance business. Climate experts at Bloomberg NEF have determined that achieving global climate goals requires a financing ratio of 4-to-1 in favor of clean energy by 2030. This ratio allows investors to understand the directionality of a company's investments and whether or not the company is on track to mitigate both its climate impact and exposure to climate-related risk. Berkshire Hathaway has always emphasized the importance of long-term thinking and sustainability in business. Disclosing Berkshire's clean energy financing ratio would demonstrate the company's commitment to transparency around climate risk and provide shareholders with critical information on whether the company is positioned for success in the future. I urge shareholders to vote in favor of this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. The motion is now ready to be acted upon. If there are any shareholders voting in person, they should now mark their ballot on the motion. Ms. Amick, when you're ready, you may give your report.
My report is ready. The ballot of the proxy holders in response to proxies that were received through last Thursday evening cast 12,136 votes for the motion and 418,021 votes against the motion. As the number of votes against the motion exceeds a majority of the number of votes of all Class A and Class B shares properly cast on the matter, the motion has failed. The certification required by Delaware law of the precise count of the votes given to the Secretary to be placed with the minutes of this meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Amick. The proposal fails. The seventh proposal requests that the board charter a new committee of independent directors to address risks associated with the development and deployment of AI across the company's operations. The directors have recommended that the shareholders vote against the proposal. I will now recognize Antoine Argos, CEO of Tulip Share Capital, to present the proposal.
Good afternoon. I am Antoine Argouge, CEO of the impact fund Tulip Share, speaking in support of Proposal 8, which underlines the need for Berkshire to charter an oversight committee on artificial intelligence as a means to proactively address all the AI risk. To our boards and my fellow shareholders, of whom there are 3 million globally, I want to stress the significance of this moment in time. I have traveled 5,000 miles from France, as you can hear, to Omaha to stand before you today. We're at the precipice. We stand at the top of an artificial intelligence mountain, and on one side we have innovation and growth, on the other the uncharted cliff of unintended consequence. And without the strategic planning on how to mitigate the economic, legal, and financial risk we face, we're setting up ourselves to plunge down that cliff without a parachute. AI is real and it's here to stay. Your vote with regard to artificial intelligence governance will have a ripple effect on all the economic landscape. Let's take a look at the BK portfolio. Apple, Amazon, Bank of America, Moody's, Amex, and all the insurance sectors will be impacted by the technology. We need a board that's hands-on on this and not hands-off. From Amazon biased hiring tool to Alexa's spread of election misinformation, these are not minor hiccups. These risks are not hypothetical. AI risk results in financial consequence, class action litigation, loss of contracts, reduced brand equity, and regulatory intervention. When AI systems behave unpredictably, the financial fallout is real. Apple just this year faced pressure from investors for more transparency on AI use. The proposal received backing from ISS and Glass Lewis, two leading proxy advisors, not because they oppose innovation, but because they recognize that AI can expose companies to unmanaged financial, legal, and reputational risk. When the companies affected are the core of the Berkshire holdings, the consequences are ours to bear. When an AI-driven product fails or breaks the law, it's not just one portfolio company that suffers, it's our reputation, it's our capital. Proposal 8. calls for Berkshire to identify and monitor AI-related risk across the operation, the portfolio company, and all the investment, present or future. To listen to employees, customers, and experts. To do what great boards do, ask the right question before it's too late. Responsible innovation means anticipating those risks before they become a crisis. And that's exactly what the AI Risk Committee will help Berkshire do. A dedicated committee gives the board the tools and structure to understand where AI is being deployed across the portfolio, what the guardrails are in place, and where the blind spot might be. It ensures we are asking the right questions when something breaks, not just when it's being built. And we're not alone. In 2023, the Norwegian government pension funds, which has lots of AUM, published expectations for AI governance across its portfolio, calling for companies to adopt board-level oversight, identify material risk, and engage in stakeholder transparently. This is not just a white paper, it's a blueprint. So in a world being rapidly reshaped by algorithm, shouldn't Berkshire, the company built on long-term thinking, be leading the conversation on how AI is governed? I don't think something so crucial should be determined solely by the subsidiary companies. The risk is real and it's not theoretical. From algorithm bias to competitive lag, reputational fallout to regulatory uncertainty, AI bring a new category of risk that is already unfolding across our portfolio. This proposal establishes a structure that helps the board understand where AI is being used, what oversight exists, and where we are exposed as investors. It's a risk mitigation tool, it's a governance standard, and it's most importantly, a commitment to long-term value creation. I'm proposing to vote for the creation of an AI committee steering Berkshire in the right direction.
Thank you, Mr. Argos. The motion is now ready to be acted upon. If there are any shareholders voting in person, they should now mark their ballot on the motion. Ms. Amick, when you're ready, you may give your report.
My report is ready. Ballot of the proxy holders in response to proxies that were received through last Thursday evening cast 14,115 votes for the motion and 418,577 votes against the motion. As the number of votes against the motion exceeds a majority of the number of votes of all Class A and Class B shares properly cast on the matter, the motion has failed. Certification required by Delaware law of the precise count of the votes given to the Secretary to be placed with the minutes of this meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Amick. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Ms. Amick. The proposal fails. I have one item I'd like to go back to, or effectively one of the proposals. Mark Hamburg, as our secretary, is there a proposal that we should address?
Yes, the fourth proposal.
Okay, so I apologize. Before we adjourn, we're going to go back to the fourth proposal. And Mark, address it as in totality, including our speaker?
Yeah, I would just introduce him again.
Okay, thank you. So, the fourth proposal requests that the Board of Directors oversee an independent racial discrimination audit. The directors have recommended that the shareholders vote against the proposal. I will now recognize Stefan Padfield to present the proposal.
Thank you. My name is Stefan Padfield, and I am the Executive Director of the Free Enterprise Project, which is part of the National Center for Public Policy Research. The National Center is the proponent of this proposal, which asks Berkshire for an independent racial discrimination audit, analyzing Berkshire's legal and reputational risks stemming from its subsidiaries' race-based initiatives. Why does Berkshire need such an audit? Because as noted in our proposal, Berkshire's subsidiaries may be engaging in unethical and illegal racial discrimination under the guise of DEI. For example, GEICO includes on its website race-based employee resource groups. Shaw Industries also offers race-based employee groups and has a supplier diversity program that tracks supplier spend on the basis of race and includes performance goals set around increasing spend with diverse suppliers. Fruit of the Loom includes increasing representation of ethnically diverse talent across the organization as one of its sustainability goals. Part of the problem here is that DIA programs such as this do not only risk legal liability, they also run the risk of dividing employees and other stakeholders on the basis of race and sex in ways that increase tension rather than promote unity. In addition, DEI programs can set the very individuals they claim to be helping up for failure and stigma. On this point, it may be worth quoting from a recent piece published by the National Center's Project 21, which is a network of Black leaders whose views are often marginalized by mainstream media and DEI activists. The piece is titled, "Rolling Back DEI Rewards Black Americans Instead of Crippling Them." Here are some of the relevant quotes. Brandon Bryce, former head of a statewide DEI program, notes that DEI reduces the value of merit, hard work, and qualifications. It also goes directly against Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s vision of a world where people are judged based on the content of their character. April Chapman, host of the Unshakable podcast, notes that DEI and related programs have convinced an entire generation that Black Americans don't have the ability to compete based on merit. President Trump, in seeking to end DEI, is countering this liberal narrative, and his view parallels that of Booker T. Washington, who taught that free markets, hard work, and the belief in one's own ability to be the best will dictate success and will result in more favorable economic outcomes. Perhaps most importantly, Priscilla Ron, former vice chair of the Colorado Republican Committee, notes that affirmative action initiatives haven't fundamentally changed economic outcomes for Black families over generations, and concludes that focusing on skills, education, and economic policies that benefit all Americans will do more to lift Black families than race-based programs. On this last point, imagine what corporations could accomplish if they stopped dividing us on the basis of race and sex in the name of DEI, and instead focused on raising the floor for all Americans in areas such as education, which would directly address the pipeline problems driving our demographic inequalities. All the foregoing helps explain precisely why we've seen some of the largest corporations in America turn their back on DEI the past few months. Before concluding, allow me to address a deceptive narrative that has been making the rounds recently and will likely be popular again after this meeting, which is that low vote counts for proposals such as this one mean shareholders legitimately support DEI. People should be very skeptical of such pronouncements because the majority of votes are controlled by institutions and individuals who are subject to conflicts of interest. Specifically, DEI is a subset of ESG, and the big three asset managers make money on fees associated with ESG funds, while the big two proxy advisory firms make money on ESG consulting. Managers and directors, in turn, are pressured by these big five to support ESG and DEI or be voted out of office. In fact, the recent case of Spence v. American Airlines found that American Airlines breached its duties to employees by relying on BlackRock to manage American Airlines' retirement plan because, according to the Wall Street Journal, BlackRock favored so-called ESG goals based on investment decisions on factors other than financial interests. Evidence that low vote counts for anti-DEI proposals shouldn't be celebrated as broad shareholder support for DEI includes the fact that Glass Lewis recently announced that it would not recommend supporting either the pro or anti-DEI proposal set for a vote at Boeing. Clearly, something other than a referendum on DEI is going on here. Nonetheless, I encourage you to support this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Padfield. The motion is now ready to be acted upon. If If there are any shareholders voting in person, they should now mark their ballot on the motion. Ms. Amick, when you're ready, may you give your report.
My report is ready. The ballot of the proxy holders in response to proxies that were received through last Thursday evening cast 2,044 votes for the motion and 431,144 votes against the motion. As the number of votes against the motion exceeds a majority of the number of votes of all Class A and Class B shares properly cast on the matter, the motion has failed. The certification required by Delaware law of the precise count of the votes given to the Secretary to be placed with the minutes of this meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Amick. The proposal fails.
I move that the meeting be adjourned.
I second the motion to adjourn.
A motion to adjourn has been made and seconded. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Bill Gates, Tim Cook, Hillary Clinton, Warren Buffett. Yeah,